This is part 2 on how do I increase my desire for prayer. And this will be the third one. And I want to talk to you about something that I don't hear talked about too much, but it's very important. The church teaches it. You know, God gave to the Jews the Sabbath. And a Sabbath, that's a whole day. 1 out of 7. 1 out of 7. And basically he said, no work. And don't seek your own pleasure. Stay at home with family. And it's not to be an entertainment day, and it's not to be a work day. In other words, it's different. And God was very serious. I mean, very serious about this. I mean, to the point of death, even. Why? Why? Did he just want to torment them? No. Jesus gave us clarity about some Jews who were really they were getting to be, they were thinking of it as an obligation. They were thinking of it as a duty. They were thinking of it as a discipline. They were thinking of it, and they'd taken all the joy out of it, and they were inflicting their pain on others, other Jews of the time. And Jesus told them, he said, this is, I think this is in Mark 2:27. I wrote it down. The Sabbath, man's not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath is made for man. Well, what does that mean? That means it's for our good. Now, in today's life, I know a lot of families, Christian families, Catholic families, they're just running themselves ragged. And even their entertainment's running themselves ragged. In other words, they don't have a regular, disciplined time of stopping. That's huge. That's huge. And we as Christians, the church teaches us to have a Sabbath. Now, it's not the 7th day as it was with the Jews. For us, it's the 8th day, which is Sunday. But, you know, the Jews, they counted their days, their days started at 6, or roughly, the evening, and went all the way to the next evening. Well, and that's why Genesis 1 says, and there was evening and there was morning, you know, the first day, and so forth and so on. That's been the way of counting. And so the early church regarded the beginning of the first day of the week on what we would call Saturday evening. That was the beginning. That's why we have Mass at 5, just around the time the sun begins to go down. We have Mass then. And that's considered to fulfill your Sunday obligation, because in the ancient way of thinking with the Jews, that was the beginning of the first day of the week. Well, I say all that. Why do I say all that? Sabbath is what has kept the Jewish nation together. Sabbath is huge. It's what's kept the Sabbath, or the Jewish family, strong. Think about it. In the ancient world, you didn't have a 2-day weekend. You worked continuously. And God pulled them out of slavery where they worked 7 days a week. And they'd often come home late when the sun was down. Their children would often not see their dad until they were asleep. And it was just a grind. 7 days a week they were exploited. And when God pulled them out, he said, you keep my Sabbath. Your children will, for your children, you, even your animals. No work. And what that did is, well, it extended their life. But it also connected them relationally. Dad, at least 1 day of the week, was available. He wasn't working. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't watching TV. He wasn't on his computer. They didn't have those, of course. But it was a similar kind of thing. Dad was available. Mom was working all the time. The woman was sun up to sundown, she was working. But you know what? On that day, in an exceptional way, Mom was available. And you know, you ask Jews that have kept the Sabbath, I think most of them have delighted in it. It is something they look forward to. They prep the evening before, they prep on Saturday afternoon for it. Well, no, it'd be Friday evening for them. They prep on Friday evening. They get all. She fixes all her meals because there's no prep, and she often fixes something that's their family favorite, and she sets it aside for the beginning. They have some kind of ritual that they begin the Sabbath with. Dad is, gets the animals all the stuff for the animals all fixed up so that they can eat and drink anyway through the Sabbath likewise. And the family is at home with each other, relaxing, and with God. You know, God has a hard time being our guest when we're so busy. When we're so preoccupied with so many things, whether it's work or entertainment or school or football, it doesn't matter. We're not available to each other, and we're not available to God. So the Sabbath is a foundation stone to prayer, because at least you guarantee that you get off the hamster wheel one time in the week. And the scriptures, now this is in by the way, the Catechism talks about this. They it's paragraph 2168 through 2195. Those paragraphs in there talks about the Sabbath for Christians. And in Isaiah 58, this is between verse 13 and 14, it says, if you'll keep the Sabbath, and if you will not go after your own pleasure, if you will, I'm going to read it because this is a good one. You should really become familiar with this one. If you're looking for a key to increase your desire for prayer, this is it. This is a big part of it. Let's see, what did I say, 13? 13. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath, and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight, don't complain about it, and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. He was a rich man. Isn't that wonderful? You will take delight in the Lord. See, that's the time that we talked about in a previous video. Time. If you will take the time, if you will really practice this, this will happen. And it's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. It does happen. So, how do you do that as a modern person with so many demands? Well, see, if you don't do it as a family, your children, the world will pull your children, and your children will pull you in 1,000 directions. Well, okay, maybe you won't have 1,000 kids, but like, for example, this is true of so many families, good Catholic families. Their kids got football. They got to take them to football. Or another kid has volleyball, and another kid is in drama, and the after-school events can just run parents ragged. And the thing is, there's no break, even on Sunday with some of the sports. There's no break. Well, you kind of need to form this habit when your family's young, ideally, and be on board with your mate. Are we going to do this thing? Now, maybe you won't do it all day. But even if you have, like from evening to maybe noon the next day, or maybe, do instead of 24 hours, maybe you do, uh, you know, 8 hours or something. Whatever you do, if you're disciplined about it, will be for the good of your family and your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, if they continue it like the Jews did. It's not just a Jewish thing. I mean, read the Catechism. The intent, those who are in the past, the church has been much more vocal, but now our culture is squeezing us into not talking about this much. But frankly, there was a time in my life when prayer was slipping through and stress was just increasing, and because I had 7 kids, and I pretty well broke. And part of my recovery was to take Saturday, the Sabbath. I demanded it. Now, that Saturday versus Sunday thing, I don't know, but it worked for me. And I had to get my wife on board with it because she would pull me in many different directions. The kids would pull me in and I was able to rebuild my spiritual and emotional health back up. And, I'm not a perfect Sabbath keeper, but I know that's a huge part of my internals, really taking care of myself. And I wish that I would have discovered the secret sooner in my life, that I could have gotten my whole family on board with it. But by this time, my teenagers were already in high school. I had teenagers, and they were in sports and in a dozen things, and we had a lot of stress. Well, we don't have to do that. There's nothing in God's green earth, so to speak, that means we have to do that. That's a decision that we can make differently. And the question is, how important is our family? How important is our relationships? How important is our life with God? If we will just get off the hamster wheel for several hours every week, hopefully a day, our lives will be changed. God will reward us. You will take delight in the Lord, it says. You will experience joy. I will feed you on the inheritance of your father Jacob. I mean, we're so worried about money. This is driving a stake in the sand and saying, I will not let the world squeeze me into its mold. And I know there's extenuating circumstances. Sometimes our work is such that, we can't have that particular day off. But the thing is, if we make a commitment to be, as a family, Sabbath keepers, we can make adjustments if we have to. But as long as we stay committed, both personally and as a family, our lives, well, frankly, one of the biggest outcomes, we'll enjoy Sunday so much more, the liturgy more. We'll enjoy our time with other Christians so much more, and we'll even enjoy praying. So anyway, I'll take another pass at this.